The air was warm that afternoon, the kind of quiet heat that settled deep in the skin and made the world feel slow. Elijah Brooks sat behind the wheel of his truck, humming to the low rhythm of a Marvin Gaye track spilling through the speakers. His right hand rested on the gear shift, his left arm out the window, a small flutter of wind tugging at the sleeve of his worn Army Ranger t-shirt. He was headed back from a veterans outreach meeting. His meetings these days were more than therapy. They were missions of their own kind. Missions to help other soldiers find footing in the strange battlefield of civilian life. The medal hung around his neck, not because he wanted anyone's praise, but because earlier that morning he had been at a ceremony for a fellow vet, and the commander had pressed it into his hands again, telling him to keep it close. A reminder. Elijah did. Not for pride, for memory, for ghosts. He was less than 10 minutes from home when the siren lit up behind him, blue and red slicing through the afternoon glare. Elijah glanced into the rearview mirror. A police cruiser swerved in behind him, keeping tight to his bumper. The driver was already gesturing for him to pull over before the loudspeaker crackled. He sighed, slowing, signal flashing, easing onto the gravel shoulder. His hand stayed at 10 and 2, his heartbeat steady. There was nothing to fear, nothing to hide, nothing except the creeping understanding of why this stop was happening. The officer was white, mid-40s maybe, jaw tight as a vice. The way he approached the truck door wasn't standard, it was predatory, hand already grazing his holster. License, registration, and proof of insurance. Yes, officer. Elijah's voice was level, calm. That voice had carried orders through the chaos of Afghanistan firefights, across the desert dust and through the noise of helicopter blades. The officer's eyes darted to Elijah's chest where the metal glinted faintly. His lip curled almost imperceptibly. What's that? A silver star. Military decoration. Where'd you get it? Elijah paused. I earned it. Uh-huh. Step out of the vehicle. The demand was sharp, not procedural. Elijah took a slow breath. His phone was already resting in the cup holder, the camera open, recording. He had started it the moment those lights came on behind him. The officer, may I ask why? You're carrying a fake military ID. Impersonating an officer is a felony. The words hit like grit in Elijah's teeth. He'd heard stories. Black veterans, pulled over, doubted, accused, their service erased in an instant because someone decided the color of their skin didn't fit the uniform in their mind's eye. Elijah stepped out, slow, compliant. The camera and the phone kept rolling, lens angled just enough to catch the officer's sneer, the way his fingers kept flexing near his weapon. Hands on the hood. Elijah complied again. The hood was hot from the sun, the metal searing against his palms. The officer rummaged through his wallet without asking permission, yanked out the military ID, held it up like it was a counterfeit bill. This is fake as hell. Where'd you buy it? Flea market? Online? Elijah didn't answer. His gaze stayed on the horizon, past the officer's head, as if looking somewhere far beyond this moment. Answer me! It's real, Elijah said evenly. And so is my service record. I did 3 tours: Afghanistan, Iraq, Operation Enduring Freedom. You can check. The officer smirked. Oh, I'll check. You'll be coming down to the station with me. A second cruiser pulled up behind them. Another officer stepped out, taller, younger, expression unreadable. He glanced at Elijah, then at the medal, then back at the first cop. Something flickered in his eyes. The first cop handed him the ID. Look at this. Guy thinks he's Rambo. The younger cop didn't say anything. He turned the card over, saw the holographic seal, the barcodes. If he recognized its authenticity, he didn't voice it. Elijah stayed still. Inside, though, every instinct screamed at him to call this out, to make it stop. But this wasn't the time. Not yet. He knew the camera in his truck was catching it all. Tone, words, body language. He also knew something the cop didn't. This wasn't just some random recording. He was part of an ongoing investigation into racial profiling and misconduct in the department. His footage wouldn't just disappear into the void. "Let's go," the first officer barked. "Hands behind your back." Cold steel kissed his wrist. The cuffs clicked tight, sharper than necessary. The metal swung forward with the motion, catching the light so bright it almost hurt to look at. They walked him to the cruiser. Every step felt heavier, like he was wading through the same sand where he'd carried wounded brothers on his back. The door slammed, the siren wailed again. At the station, the booking process was as humiliating as it was predictable. His belt, shoes, and medal were taken. His mugshot was snapped under the same harsh lighting that had stripped thousands of people before him of their dignity. The cop smirked the whole time. "You'll see a judge tomorrow," he said, tossing Elijah into a holding cell. Elijah sat on the cold bench, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. His mind was clear, controlled. There would be no yelling, no begging. He wasn't here to plead. He was here to document, and the camera already had everything it needed. By the time his attorney, a fellow vet, got him released on his own recognizance the next day, the footage had already been secured, backed up, and encrypted. Elijah didn't leak it himself. He didn't have to. 2 weeks later, the video hit the internet, uncut. No music, no dramatic editing, just raw, undeniable reality. It spread like wildfire. News anchors replayed the moment the cop accused them of faking his service. Social media roared with outrage. Veterans groups from across the country issued statements. And Elijah stayed silent because he wasn't aiming for revenge in the way the world expected. He was aiming for something bigger. The cop had no idea the trap was already set. The weeks that followed were a storm Elijah had expected, just not one this loud. Cable news networks cycled the video on repeat. Commentators dissected the clip frame by frame, their voices dripping with either outrage or defensiveness, depending on which side of the ideological line they stood. The first officer, now public, was trending alongside #the medal and the mugshot. What the public didn't know was that Elijah had been in the middle of working with a small coalition, veterans, civil rights attorneys, and 2 quietly determined state legislators on a bill aimed at curbing racial profiling and increasing police accountability. They had data. They had testimony. What they didn't have was a spark big enough to ignite public pressure. The video was gasoline. Elijah didn't sit in front of cameras or book interviews. He stayed deliberately out of sight, letting the storm churn without him in the eye. His friends told him to speak. His attorney said a press conference would humanize him. But Elijah wasn't chasing pity. He wanted policy. He wanted change that would outlast outrage. The officer who arrested him was placed on paid administrative leave pending internal investigation. The department statement was a careful, slippery thing, full of allegeds and procedurals. But Elijah knew the truth. Without public heat, that man would have been back on the street within weeks, badge polished, swagger restored. So he waited. He let the temperature rise.
One night, he sat at his kitchen table, phone buzzing endlessly with notifications, while his old ranger brother, Marcus, sat across from him, nursing a beer. "You're playing chess," Marcus said finally, breaking the silence, "and they think you're still standing on the checkers board." Elijah gave a faint smile. "Revenge feels good for 5 minutes. Reform lasts a lifetime." 2 days later, the bill, previously buried in committee, was suddenly scheduled for debate. The lawmakers backing it knew the public was watching, and with every passing day, the video kept the wound fresh. The hearing room was packed, cameras everywhere. The bill's text was simple but sharp: mandatory body cameras for all patrol officers, independent review boards for misconduct cases, and penalties for proven racial profiling that went beyond quiet suspensions. When Elijah finally walked into the chamber, the hum of conversation dropped. He wasn't in uniform, but the medal rested on his chest, polished this time, not for pride, but for purpose. He took his seat at the witness table. His hands were steady as he raised them to take the oath. "My name is Elijah Brooks. I served my country for over a decade. I've been to places where trust is the only thing that keeps a man alive. Out there, you don't get to decide who's worth protecting based on the color of their skin. You just protect them. And yet, here at home, I was treated like a criminal for wearing the uniform I earned, not because of what I did, but because of who I am." He didn't cry. He didn't raise his voice. He simply laid out the facts: the video, the humiliation, the truth that his story wasn't unique, only unusually well documented. By the time he finished, the room was silent. Even the most combative committee members didn't meet his eyes. Over the next week, pressure mounted. Veterans groups staged rallies. Civil rights organizations flooded lawmakers' offices with calls and letters. The governor, sensing which way the wind was blowing, announced his strong support for the bill. The day of the vote, Elijah didn't attend. He sat on his porch, coffee in hand, listening to the cicadas buzz in the humid afternoon air. His phone was on the table beside him. When it finally lit up with a text from Marcus, it passed, 72-28. He let out a long, slow breath. News outlets framed it as a victory born from viral outrage. Elijah knew better. It was the result of years of quiet work, of allies building a foundation that could hold when the weight of public attention finally landed. As for the officer, the internal investigation concluded 2 months later. Terminated. No pension. His career in law enforcement was over. Elijah didn't celebrate. The man was just one piece of a broken system. One evening, months after the law had taken effect, Elijah stood in the Veterans Outreach Center, helping a young Marine fill out housing paperwork. The TV in the corner was tuned to local news. A segment showed patrol officers wearing newly issued body cameras, the anchor calling it the Brooks Accountability Act. The Marine glanced up. "That you?" Elijah shrugged lightly. "Just another mission." When he left the center that night, the street was quiet, the air cool. He thought about the path that had led here, the handcuffs, the mugshot, the sting of being doubted in the country he had fought to protect. And he thought about the law now in place, a shield not for himself, but for those who would come after. The revenge was